I would
Oh,
regret
man.
it if people look back at the first episode and you weren't on it.
Yeah, well, I like that. It's called forward thinking.
We have one of the worst beats in the world. We do. Our beat is horrible.
Connor could shove that article up his ass.
And then I went to that game and I was like, this is the greatest team I've ever seen in my life. I'm a Jet fan. This is going to be the greatest run ever. Yeah.
No, because if they take Aquanu, I'm not complaining.
Joe Douglas is the king of keeping shit close to the vest.
A 2, a 4, and a 6 for Darnold?
Did the Jets really ruin Sam Darnold, or did Sam Darnold just suck all along and we were just trying to talk ourselves into it?
And Hamilton is a player who can potentially make a very big impact.
And suddenly, here we are today. You can't get rid of him.
Right. It's like a plague.
Joe Douglas was hired because he's not those general managers.
Okay, Luscious.
Somebody is going to fall just like Elijah Moore did, just like Michael Carter did.
You know, what would, if you had one sentence to say to Joe Douglas, what would you say? So you would say, you had me at hello, and then give him a big old wet one right on the smack.
Hello, everybody. Low energy? Yeah, low energy. So as most of you know, I had COVID last week. And on Friday, I was tested negative. Thursday, I tested negative. Friday, I tested negative. No more symptoms. I thought, yay. Enjoyed a couple of days to end the trip in North Carolina. Flew back. Monday morning, I wake up sick. I test COVID positive. Apparently, it's called the COVID relapse or the Provox or Provox relapse. 5% of people who take this freaking drug that it works for, it gets you healthy, and then you just get sick again. So here I am with COVID in quarantine. Lucky I'm home this time. So rather than being in a tiny little room in the back of my parents' house, I have the whole upstairs to myself, including my studio. So not being that high energy, luckily, I have help. And you all know the help that I'm talking about to start with, because he's here every week, and he's been here every week since the very beginning. He is the hot dog eating, Mets rooting, Knicks rooting, Rangers rooting, gets emotional and upset when you say things that are bad against the Jets, screaming, texting, chatting, the trivia asking, the most reliable co-host in the world. Watch okay, that's my shortened version.
In the world.
My shortened version.
Very, very shortened version. Jeremy, you are a trooper. You showed up. You're playing injured today, which is more than I can say about other players that have played for our franchise in years past. But it seems like Elijah Moore had a little bit of a relapse where he may have realized that he wanted to get traded after all. It just took him 6 months to realize it. And now greener pastures, or in this case, browner pastures, are ahead for number 8. And now onward and upward for the New York Jets. But I know on a night like this, on a day as momentous as this, it can't be just us. I think we could use a little bit of company. You got anybody in mind?
I think that you should do the intro because you got the energy.
Ladies and gentlemen, you know it. Mel Kiper envies him. Daniel Jeremiah wants to be him. The foremost dread prognosticator in the world.
Keep it going. Keep it going. I love it. Jeremy, he can replace you, man.
That was great. That's why he's the co-host of the show. That's why he's been here from the beginning.
Ooh, man. Got me going, man. Got me going. What's up, guys? Jeremy, sorry to hear you're feeling shitty, pal.
Yeah, it sucks. It sucks. All I care about is that my wife is not infected. So far she's negative. So we have our fingers crossed that yet again she will. She didn't get it last week when I got it. So we're just hoping she keeps testing negative, and that's the important thing because we know I'll be okay, but she's got the compromised immune system and all that. So
Gotcha.
Right. So just to welcome some people, we got Nathan in here from the beginning. My friend Twisted is here. The OG original King Snacker, Jets Mess is here. Good old Harlan Abraham is here, welcoming everybody.
As
Salty
always.
Nulty, the McGulty, is here. You know, he was in a band. He looked like he was Jimmy Buffett, playing drums for Jimmy Buffett. People don't know that about him, but he's he has a Jimmy Buffett side to him. Then we got Weed the People. Good to see you, brother. Good to see you here. And we got Matthew Smith in the house, all the way from New Zealand, Braden, New Zealand. Ronald Perry in the house. I love everybody that's joining here early, getting involved in the chat. We appreciate it. New York Jets fan 4, what's up, my brother? Good to see you. And everybody else that's watching, Jeremy Curley's here too. Nice.
Hey, Carly, we could use you.
I guess he has time on his hands. Well, we thought we did. We maybe about 12 o'clock this afternoon we could have used him, but we got somebody who can return a punt. I'm sure that this particular individual is just as competent as fair catching as Jeremy Curley was back in the day.
Now I have a guest that might come on later to give us some insight on our new wide receiver. But obviously, the big talk now that quickly went away is the main topic, and we all know what everybody wants to talk about, and that is the Elijah Moore trade. How do we feel about the trade? Did we get value for the trade? What was the purpose of the trade? Was it to secure a pick that's going to eventually go to Green Bay? Was it not? A million things to talk about that. So I'll let you guys take it away. We'll start with Adam and move on down to Dom C.
You know what? For me, I felt that when I first heard the Hardeman trade, I was very excited about it. This is a player who, for one thing, has great speed, that 4.3 speed that I think this offense was really, really lacking. So you want different types of receivers, different types of guys who can fit in different roles. You know, despite the narrative that we hear, you don't need one receiver to do everything. Certain guys have the size, certain guys have the speed, some guys have the catch radius, some guys have the quick feet and whatnot. Hardeman is that burner that we could really use. Like, he even tweeted today, I could do a lot more than just jet sweeps. And he seems pretty excited to be in this offense. And Elijah Moore had definitely had his share of quickness, but it's like, I felt like they never quite found the right fit for him in this offense. And I believe quite a bit of that is on Mike LaFleur. Quite a bit of that is on Zach Wilson. But it's like they didn't know if they wanted to use him in the slot or on the outside, because he's 5'10", but he tries to play like he's an outside receiver, but he's not quite the natural slot player. He's sort of a weird hybrid. And at this point, as far as that trade goes, to me, it made sense for both teams. Cleveland needs another receiver to go alongside Amari Cooper. I'm sure he'll be very happy to play with Deshaun Watson if Deshaun Watson can regain a little bit of his form. But when you factor in that with the trade up, the Jets basically trade him for the equivalent of a very high third-round pick, and you factor in that 2 years have passed since Moore was drafted, I think it's just reasonable compensation for both sides. Now, I would be very surprised if the Jets wind up drafting all three of these picks, 13, 42, 43, without making a trade at least somewhere along the way. But I am now feeling more and more confident that this trade is going to happen for a certain quarterback. It's got to happen by the draft at this point, because the Jets are trying to front load this draft to have a more appealing draft pick ready for that certain team in Wisconsin. So I think today was a big piece. I still don't think they're giving up 13. I think it's going to be one of these second-round picks, maybe a conditional, and a player like Corey Davis. That's where I'm thinking this is right now, and we could go a whole lot more into it. But Dom, what were your thoughts first with Hardeman and then with the?
I'll talk on Elijah first, and here's my reality is that I think when you get rid of a 22 very cost-controlled, skilled player, it's definitely not a great thing. I was not one that kind of was over Moore when he did his whole, baby thing. It wasn't like, I didn't think it was too becoming of him to do that, but players play and on the field, he showed that, he's talented. It didn't, it might not have worked out for him, last year at all, but going back to his rookie year when he had 5-6 touchdowns, something like 600 yards, something like that.
Yep.
So the talent is there. That's undeniable. However, sometimes you got to give to get. And I think if this was the end of it, like if this was the only trade, if there was no second or third part of this, I think that I'd question a little bit more. But I think for the greater good of what we're trying to do in building this team, especially like you mentioned with Rodgers, I think it makes sense. I think this is just one piece, one little chess move. The pawn got moved, and now we're going to try to move in towards checkmate here. Listen, if somebody has to be sacrificed, so be it. If it's Elijah Moore, it's Elijah Moore. Like I said, I think that the way Hackett runs his offense, even though it's West Coast and kind of a similar scheme in stylistic form to what we had in place last year, Hackett runs it a lot different. Hackett prefers big slots. He prefers guys that wide receivers that he can utilize in blocking. Hackett's a run first guy. He historically he's close to 60-40. So I don't know where Moore fit in that place. Now I'm not comparing the two, but I will say if you look last year, Denver's offense, KJ Hamler, who has a very similar skill set to Elijah Moore, shifty, very quick in and out of his breaks real quick, kind of probably more slot based than outside, similar to Moore. He received, I think, 17 targets all year, caught 4 passes over 10 games. Just wasn't utilized. It's just not the kind of receiver that Hackett wants. Now, is that the reason that we traded him? No, I don't think that's the reason we traded him. I think the reason we traded him is because Joe Douglas knows that the holes that he has to fill in the target areas that he wants to play, the guys that he wants to play ball with come draft day are going to be in that top of that second round area. So to do so, especially if you're going to possibly move one of those second rounders to Green Bay in the deal, he didn't want to be void of that area, right? So ideally, you still have 13, whether you choose to stick and pick there, if it's one of the tackles, if it's now somebody else wants to bump up, there's somebody that falls and somebody wants to jump up, you can come down and you can, Joe Douglas can recoup that third rounder. You can recoup, multiple picks, so on and so forth. It gives us a lot more flexibility. I think you can now move up from second round if you want to move up to the end of the first and go get somebody. You want to move back because the value, there's still a lot of players on the board that you like in that second round. It gives you a lot more flexibility, especially with all the grumblings of another wide receiver possibly coming on. I just don't know. Like somebody had to go, and if the end result is Aaron Rodgers for Elijah Moore and our third rounder, plus whatever compensatory picks, if there's one next year, I'll sign up for that 10 out of 10 times.
Yeah, I think that's the way you have to look at it. Like if we end up giving one of those picks to Green Bay in the second round, you have to look at it, for what it really is. You're talking about we lost our third round pick in that situation, and we lost Elijah Moore, and we get Aaron Rodgers. And I think most people a few months ago, all year long during the season, when it first started, like there's an opportunity or a window that we can get Aaron Rodgers. I don't think anybody would have argued the 74th pick in the draft and Elijah Moore to secure Aaron Rodgers. If we don't, I think I got to go back to what Adam said. It makes so much sense. We're taking an early first round pick. He had 2 years, and overall, even though he showed potential, and there were moments that we loved him, and all that good stuff, at the end of the day, horrible disappointment. And in the middle of his second season, he demanded a trade, even though we were winning. After a win, created negativity, which is the opposite of the locker room that Robert Saleh and the culture that we're trying to build. For us to turn around and only lose 1 round of value in 2 years for a early second rounder to get back an early third rounder, I think is pretty good. Like, I think it's reasonable to sit there and be relieved and say, it could have been a lot worse because a lot of times when somebody threatens to leave or says, I want to trade, it ends up a lot worse. So what do you think of that?
Well, I got to say this, like the compensation, pick which works out to pick 63 or 64 overall,
It's
which
like
is
the second or third
second,
pick. In
the
second
second
round,
pick in the third round. Okay,
Third round, yeah.
so we took Elijah Moore with the second pick in the second round. So he played for 2 years. You're only getting 2 years left on that cheap deal. Like the value's there. You don't want to see it because Jets fans look in a very, very skewed green goggles, and Elijah Moore was the greatest, and a third round pick is so valuable. Well, listen, that's the going value. That's a guy that's a guy who's got a very high ceiling. I'm not denying that. Like I think Elijah Moore's a really good player. I'm sad that he's not on our team anymore. He's a really good player, but he didn't do anything. He hasn't shown anything to say that he's worth any more than his draft value less around. That's the going rate.
Yeah, it's a player who we talked about what could have been. How many times have we talked about, he didn't make the catch, but if you look at the all 22, look how open he's running. And he just wasn't seen or whatever, and all this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But I think in the back of our minds, we felt this inevitability once he made the trade request after the Jets won a game, and ever since then, it just felt like this is on borrowed time. I think in the back of our minds, at least for me, I was thinking to myself, yeah, but if he could play with a real quarterback, who knows what he could do? Maybe that's just all he needs. I still remember when it was Lavernius Coles who made the draft day announcement. He said, the Jets draft from Ole Miss, future Pro Bowler, Elijah Moore. And I think a lot of us felt like that could happen. Once because I don't think a lot of us expected a wide receiver at that particular point in the draft. But as we watched him, we thought, I see something here. And now if it happens, it's going to be someplace else. But, I've seen some people say this is a knock on Joe Douglas, that he's giving up on this draft pick and this draft pick didn't work out. You have to see what this draft pick turns into because, a great player may not always be a great player for all 32 teams. Sometimes you have to be the right fit. And sometimes it's just not meant to work out in this particular team with this particular franchise.
Yeah. I don't think it's reasonable to say, like preemptively say, all right, the Cleveland hosed us or the Jets lost this trade. You don't know what happened. It's not even hours old yet. Then no one's stepped on the field. We don't know what Elijah Moore is going to do in Cleveland. Listen, he's got the talent where he can excel, but like Jeremy said, if that draft pick turns into Aaron Rodgers, that we traded, that second round draft pick turns into Aaron Rodgers, and Aaron Rodgers takes us to the promised land, then who's going to really remember Elijah Moore?
No. One Super Bowl, every player that is on the team, it was a worthwhile pick. It was a worthwhile trade. It was a worthwhile signing. Can't second guess anything if it means one Super Bowl. But it's pretty amazing to think about. Now, I don't know if Corey Davis is going to be on this team. I really do. I genuinely, I keep playing it out in my mind back and forth if he's going to be on this team. But to think if he's not, the two receivers on this team returning from last year are Garrett Wilson and Denzel Mims. I couldn't have predicted that at the beginning of this offseason.
Yeah, no, there's definitely, and which makes me think that there's something else brewing. Because
there very well could be.
And again, I'm not a Corey Davis hater. I'm not at all. Like, he's fine for what he is. He's a good, solid number two. He's had some trouble staying on the field and so on and so forth. But, he comes to work and, he definitely has a good attitude and so on and so forth. So if he's here, I'm fine with it, but I think that he's going to be part of that deal if that deal ever consummates.
I think so as well. And the last that I saw, I was looking at the cap space. I believe the Jets are down to about $7 or $8 million. Left in cap space, somewhere in that area.
Yeah, we were just talking about that. It's like $7.75 million as of right now.
I figure it's going to cost at least that to have the draft, especially if you have these premium picks. Plus, you're adding $15 million in Rodgers potentially.
Yeah.
So at that point, you have to start thinking to yourself, we might need a little bit more room here. We might need to, change some things up. I still find it hard to believe that Corey Davis and Carl Lawson are going to be on this roster come the beginning of the season. I'm actually quite surprised / relieved / worried. I'm so over the top weird with my feelings about Carl Lawson because I like the player, but business wise, I don't know if it makes sense to keep that $15 million cap hit.
Yeah.
I don't know if there's going to be room for it because, we still have JFM. We still have JJ, even though Green Bay thinks they're getting him already. We'll talk about the Green Bay fans at some point, I'm sure. Oh, my God.
I'd rather not.
Oh, boy. Bryce Huff, Michael Clemens. We're pretty dang deep at that position to the point where I'm still okay letting Lawson go, saving that $15 million, especially if that's the cap hit that Aaron Rodgers is going to take on. But then, are we extending Quinnen Williams? And if so, with what money? Now, I feel like Quinnen's been pushed way to the back burner as we've been making all these changes on the offense. I still want that Quinnen extension to happen this offseason. And, I don't know if they're going to backload the deal or what they're going to do, but they can't forget about Quinnen.
Yeah, for sure. I think that I don't think the Quinnen deal needs to happen right this second.
No.
And even if it does, you can, like we were talking about it on with the Beanbaggers before on Bean's private Zoom. The Jets have the 5th most cap space in 2024. 2025, I'm sure they're way up there as well. But as it stands right now, as constituted, they have the 5th most cap space in 2024. So you can effectually sign Quinnen Williams to an extension, lower his cap hit this year, and still have plenty of room to deal with in the future. That's why I think that, I'm not all that worried about the cap space. First off, I don't think that, I think that the draft class is already covered. That's not inclusive in the,
okay.
Because I think we have I think we really have 11 point something million, in cap space that covers available cap space. I think we have 7 and change. So, it's if Corey Davis goes, there's 17. There's Aaron Rodgers, right? Because Corey Davis is 10.5. So
10.5.
There's your Aaron Rodgers fix. If you shore up the tackle spot, you can play around with Dwayne Brown's money because I think he's about 10 million or so.
10 million.
Yeah, 10 million. What happens at the safety position? Is I don't see us going into the season with Whitehead and Chuck Clark. I think they're a bit redundant of each other. You can get rid of Whitehead almost scot-free and dead money as well, and that's $7-8 million. So you can do all this stuff and not even have to worry about Carl Lawson. I was all gung-ho and let's get rid of Carl Lawson and free up that space. But now I'm more to the point where, listen, we're thin on the defensive line altogether. Yes, we have some pieces at the edge, rotational pieces, but as a whole, they know that they like to play 8-9 guys, in that rotation. So we can get rid of Carl Lawson, save $15 million. That's great, but then you're going to have to replace him.
Yep.
Where are you replacing him with? Are you replacing him with a draft pick? Are you going to use one at 13? Or are you going to use one at 42 that we just got? Or are we going to, or 44, whichever one we keep, whatever it is?
I think you're increasing the reps for Johnson and Huff. Keep in mind, Clemens had a lot more reps last season than JJ did. If you're 4 defensive ends, if you have 4 defensive ends and JFM, Johnson, Huff, and Clemens, that's a good start. And of course, you could always add a guy, with a late round pick or an undrafted free agent. I have every confidence in Joe Douglas to find an undrafted free agent on the defensive line. But the defensive tackles. Right now we've got Quinnen, Solomon Thomas, and Tenzel Smart.
Yeah.
That's basically all we have. So, yeah. I keep saying, I feel like I say it every show and I sound like a broken record, but it is what it is. Starting defensive tackle. I look at the holes on this team right now, and realistically, I see starting quarterback. Hopefully, I expect it to get fixed, but I'm not counting my chickens before they hatch. Offensive tackle, offensive center, defensive tackle. Maybe a sub linebacker, maybe that Quan replacement, unless they want to bring Quan back, and hopefully free safety. And I think at this point, the idea is to address all of it in the draft. I don't think the Jets are really going to make another free agent move, and if they do, I think it's going to be a very low value sort of situation. I think they're probably say a Ben Jones, it's like, here's our offer. This is what we want to pay you. We'd love to have you here, but I don't think there's a whole lot of room for negotiation right now.
Yeah, well, there, like you said before, though, there's still plenty of cap gymnastics that can be played. You can play around with the numbers. You can extend or you can renegotiate Carl Lawson. You can extend him and lower that cap at this year. You can gain 18 million in moving on from Whitehead or Davis as part of a deal or a cut in Whitehead's situation. Again, I'm not saying I'm necessarily all for those, but it just doesn't I don't think the team as it's constituted right now is a team that we're going to see in September. I'll say that. I think there's going to be some other additions. Obviously, the quarterback's the big one. I could see a veteran center, if it's Ben Jones or somebody else being brought in to work alongside or in front of a rookie for a little while. I don't know if we make a move I don't know if we make many other free agent splashes outside of possibly another wide receiver. I don't see us bringing in a safety. I think that they're going to probably draft somebody later on and have them battle it out with Tony Adams. I think
at this point. Yeah, I mean, if they weren't willing to give Chauncey Gardner-Johnson like $6-7 million, I mean, who are you going to bring in from free agency?
Yeah, the only guy that's sitting out there, the two guys of any interest is John Johnson, who was cut from Cleveland, and Taylor Rapp, who's 25 years old. They're really the only other guys that
Rams.
Yeah, the only other guys that are worth anything. So
yeah, and John Johnson, I believe, was a Ram before he went to the Browns. I think he signed a 3-year deal. Didn't play as well as people would have liked to have seen him play. And hey, if they want to take their chances on what they have, Whitehead, Clark, Adams, Parks. I mean, Ashton Davis to me has been relegated to a full-time special teams player at this point in his career. If they're confident, if they feel they can roll with that, then that's fine, because you know what? You can't have premium assets at every single position.
Yeah,
it's not realistic. So if you're going to go spend lower at a certain position, I mean, safety can make sense, especially if you have a really good pass rush and really good cornerbacks, which we know the Jets certainly do have.
Sure. I get it. I see a lot of people talking about trading down from 13. I'm all for it. However, to trade down, you need a partner that wants to trade up. And this draft class, it's not the strongest. It's not. It is far from top heavy. You got 2 blue chip defensive players who will be off the board before we pick at 13. The tackle class. I know we talk about the 3 big names a lot, but they all come with there's no solid guarantees out of any of them. They all come with flaws. Paris Johnson's very good, but very shaky in the pass, in against the pass rush. They're talking about him maybe spending a year or 2 inside a guard, which he didn't in college first. Broderick Jones, his ceiling is Trent Williams, but he's going to take some development. He's not going to come in and play like Trent Williams. He's not going to come in and play like Ike Ekwonu did last year. There's going to be some time to really develop. He's a guy who I could see, if he was the Jets' target at 13, I could see him not starting. If Mekhi comes back healthy, I could see us running with Dwayne Brown and Mekhi Becton and having a guy like Broderick Jones. And then there's Skoronski, who I think is the best out of all of them. However, he just doesn't check the boxes in what Joe Douglas looks at as a tackle. So I really don't think that, he would be in play for the Jets if tackle was the real focus at 13,
So, guys, I have another opinion on this subject, and that opinion is coming from here.
Hey,
my friends.
Welcome, Chigo.
Dom, you just went on a whole speech on the offensive line, but you didn't mention a certain center tackle that the Jets drafted last year. I'm sure Tigo would be happy to throw him into the mix. I believe his initials are MM.
I love Max. If you're a member to my channel, you can spam Max. I have a Max Mitchell emote. I love Max, but until I get he's cool and he's cleared of that blood clot thing, that's a serious thing. And we haven't I'm gonna go with the no news is good news kind of a thing of a situation. But we haven't heard anything positive or negative about Max. But
You
yeah,
just wait on OTAs. It's one
Yeah.
of those things because he's certainly not about to skip OTAs. If he's there, if he's participating, I'll be good with it. But I think with these blood clots, there's something that typically can be managed. With with the right meds and the right care. I mean, you can manage them pretty well, especially nowadays. So I got pretty good confidence that Mitchell will be okay in that respect. The question is, can he take another step up in his play from last season? Because if we could just go with Mitchell and Becton as our two tackles, oh my gosh, that'd be like a perfect scenario, and we wouldn't even have to talk about an offensive tackle in the first round. But right now, it's like, well, what else could we do but an offensive tackle in the first round? Unfortunately,
I still think I don't think tackle is. I think this staff is a little bit higher on these tackles than a lot of the fan base and the pundits are. Now, especially with like some of the guys that you can get in like the second round and in the third round and things like that. That being said, my Max Mitchell love and wanting him to be a starter was based purely on the tackle room that we had last year. I liked Max Mitchell right then and there, day one, more than I liked George Fant. And so my pounding the table was for Max to start over George, because I didn't, and I still don't think that that George Fant was all that good of a tackle. I think he had one hit wonder. I wasn't ready to bank on that. And so for me, I wanted to run Mekhi Becton and Max Mitchell because the only other option was George Fant. The moment we brought in Dwayne Brown, Max right now on the team is tackle 3. He should not beat out Dwayne Brown or Mekhi Becton based on skill alone. And I love having a guy who, again, I'm a big fan of Max Mitchell, but having him as your swing tackle, your backup guy that can come in if one of those two guys goes down, which historically probably one of them will, I like that. But does that mean that we can't get I'm thinking of that in like you hear it said all the time about general managers, you have to think in 2 years spurts. Who's going to be the left tackle and the right tackle next year? That's something that worries me. What happens if Mekhi goes down, knock on all of the wood again? What happens if you can't take a tackle at 13 because they're all gone? Dwayne Brown at that point will probably turn 90. Are you really going to run AVT and Max Mitchell as your tackles of the future? Is that the plan for next year? Like, we're still going to have Rodgers next year. Still going to have to be competitive. But like,
Well, we don't have Rodgers yet, so it's hard to say that we're going to have him next year. We don't have him yet.
I don't have him. It's the least of my concerns is the Aaron Rodgers deal.
I mean, I would imagine we're going to end up getting him, but it's not a done deal yet. I mean, if nobody blinks, nobody blinks. But at some point, somebody's going to blink, because we can't go into the season with Zach Wilson as our quarterback, and they can't go into the season with an unhappy Aaron Rodgers who doesn't want to play for them with all that money they own. So, I mean, a deal, it kind of has to happen, but then again, at the same time, I understand what Dom is saying. Somebody has to blink.
Yeah.
Somebody has to blink. Somebody has to be willing to say, okay. And I don't know where this goes if that doesn't happen. What if they just stand there staring at each other and nobody blinks? Like, at what point is people were actually talking about the NFL getting involved because of scheduling and how much of an impact it can make on the NFL and how big of a deal this is. Because do you put the Jets on Monday Night Football or not? You need the deal to happen to make those decisions. I don't know if the NFL has the legal right to stick a moderator in there and do that, though.
They've done it in the past.
Right. Oh, they've done that in the past because maybe there's a clause in the agreement with a commissioner that when there's something like this that's so bigger than just the two teams and impacts the entire league, maybe there is a rule that they can come in and say, we need to bring in a moderator and get this done.
I think there is a hard deadline.
They've done.
Oh, go ahead.
No, after you.
Oh, I was going to say, I think there is a hard deadline. I think that hard deadline is the first day of training camp for both teams, because if Aaron, and I think Aaron should come out and say this or inform Green Bay of this, is that if they don't trade him, he's showing up. Because that's worst case scenario for Green Bay. How are you going to have your 18-year Hall of Fame, 1 year removed from back-to-back MVP quarterbacks showing up to practice with that money and all of that stuff? Because that can be a people tend to forget he does have sway in that locker room. There's still a big chunk of that locker room that's on his side. That could be a problem really, really quickly.
I don't think he shows up though. You know, he's on the he counts towards their cap and he's on the team, but there's a bevy of different reasons where they can just tell him, all right, you know what, like stay home. You know, it's not ideal, but at that point, I think I disagree with Tigo. I think that the deadline really is the draft. You know, and listen, reality is I think it gets done. I think it probably gets done this weekend at the owners' meetings.
Owners' meetings, exactly what I was thinking. When they're in person, I think they're going to make some progress between. I think they start Sunday and go into like Tuesday or so. So I'm Sunday to Wednesday. I was thinking the Monday or Tuesday of next week, you might hear something.
Yeah, I think that I think that's going to be the case. Hang on.
By the way, they just released. By the way, if you want some depressing news, well, it doesn't matter. I'm going to give it to you anyway. Looking at the list of second-round wide receivers the Jets have drafted now. Yeah, since Wesley Walker in 1977, here's who we've drafted in the second round. Ralph Clayton. Anyway, Reggie Rembert, Ryan Yarborough, Alex Van Dyke, Stephen Hill, Devin Smith, Denzel Mims, and Elijah Moore. Wow. Let's throw in Jason Morrow at tight end while we're at it. I mean, we may as well include him in this list. My goodness.
You got you win some and you lose some, and we just haven't won yet in the second round wide receiver pool.
No.
But again, like I said, that's I'm not saying that Elijah Moore is a bust. Those other guys are busts. I'm not ready to label Elijah Moore a bust. He might go to Cleveland and be great, you know, and that's what it is. If for the greater good, this draft pick, this extra second round that we acquired, gets us Aaron Rodgers and still keeps us in position to move up and down the board to go get our center, go get our defensive tackle, then, you know, so be it. Somebody, I think it was, I forgot who tweeted out. Oh man, I saw it and I forgot who it was. Somebody from like the NFL Network or one of those real, you know, professional guys. They said, listen, the extra second round pick puts the Jets in the position to be in the ball game for guys like Avila, Tippmann, and, you know, Adebaware, the defensive tackle / end from Northwestern. You know, he used those names as examples instead of like that third round tier of guys, which is not nearly as good. So, you know, it makes sense that you add an extra second. You figure one's going to go to Green Bay, and you're still leave yourself in a position to get some good players into the pipeline. You know, maybe even start. You know, you got to imagine right now, as constituted, we're looking for our starting center in the draft.
Absolutely. Yep. I don't think there's any question about it. You know, the only other scenario I can think of is signing Ben Jones to a 1-year deal. I mean, if Connor McGovern was going to come back, he would have signed with us by now. Yeah. I am very surprised he does not have a contract somewhere at this point. But I could see realistically Ben Jones for a year and then draft a center and work him in, or maybe play that center at a guard position, possibly. You don't have to, just an idea, you know. And if you wanted to, you could put that center at right guard, that developmental guy, move ABT over to right tackle. I mean, you could configure it that way as well. I think it really depends how the draft board falls, and you just put the best 5 that you can, the best unit of 5 that you can. You might have to rework it a little bit next year, and that's fine. But if you wind up having that long-term center after this season, because we've had trouble finding centers for a little while now, those couple of years, the worst Jets offense we've seen in the last little while is when we had to watch, you know, Spencer Long. He couldn't snap a ball. He couldn't do a shotgun snap. Wesley Johnson, guys like that. You know, McGovern has stabilized things a little bit, but he's been very run-of-the-mill And center is like the one position we're spoiled in when it comes to being Jets fans. So for me, I really want that long-term center again. Whippler, Tippmann, JMS, whoever it has to be.
Yeah.
So, hey, Italy, good to see you, man.
Yeah, interesting because I didn't even consider Tippmann on my radar because Tom and I never really, until today, I never really heard you speak much about him. And then somebody was asking about
Yeah,
him.
well, he was on my when we went over our interior lineman. I talked to him. I talked about him a lot.
Yeah,
like I said, I had. Yeah. He's good. Listen, there's nothing wrong with Joe Tippmann. There's a good chance that most teams or that he's the second center taken off the board. There's a good chance of it.
Yep.
You know, I happen to like Whippler a little bit more, but I'm not going to say that Tippmann's bad. I just like. I think Whippler's fit in our offensive scheme is perfect. That's what really kind of draws me towards him. You know, I love the way that he moves. I love the way he moves in space, the way he gets into the second level. He does that better than Tippmann. But, you know, Tippmann's a big, strong guy. You know, he's not scheme specific. He can handle the zone blocking scheme. He can, you know, work as a power gap duo kind of, guy. He's not bad. I mean, a lot of teams, he's been bantered about, you know, with the Giants and with Seattle and with Arizona and all those teams picking the late first, early second before us.
Houston,
exactly.
I see a lot of Houston fans talking about Tippmann, JMS, Whippler. I have a buddy who's a Houston fan. We actually just did a video together. And that's one of the biggest talking points that he was talking about was like center is probably the pick at the top of the second.
Well, there's 5 teams as I see it right now, maybe 6, but 5 I can reel off easily between the Jets, the Giants, Houston, Arizona, and Seattle. All need centers.
Yep.
And you know, the Giants could take one in the first round. You know, they absolutely could. Where they are, that's going to be the hot spot. Seattle has 2 first-round picks, right? And the beauty about having 2 first-round picks in any draft is you can take a guy. You can either take a shot on a guy, or you can take a guy higher than you might normally have him because you have that. It's a luxury, exactly. So you know,
that's a great Seattle. I didn't even count Seattle.
Seattle, yeah, well, they need interior, and the thing with Schmitz is that he, as good of a center as he is, he can slide in and play left guard or right guard without question. You know, he's 6'4", 313 pounds. He's solid. He moves. You know, so he can play. You know, as opposed to Whippler. You know, Whippler's a center, and that's it. You know, 290 pounds. He's not going to play the guard. Guys like Avila, guys like even Tippmann, guys like Avila, guys like JMS. They're centers that can also have the body and the build that they can hang and guard. You know, so teams that need an interior that might need a center, like I said, Arizona, the Giants, Houston, Seattle, Pittsburgh could be another one. They have, you know, they got an extra second-round pick, right? They got pick number 32.
Yeah.
These are all teams that, you know, centers are on the board for them, and this is where they're going to fall off. They're going to fall off in that second round. They're going to fall off in that late first, early second round. Now we have 2 picks.
Say again, Tigo?
It's Pittsburgh. I thought they gave money to a center last year. I have a ton of friends who are Pittsburgh Steelers fans.
Yeah, I wasn't sure about the Steelers, but yeah, I mean,
they have Mason Cole.
Mason
They
Cole?
could definitely upgrade. They can get out from under his contract really easily. Yeah, I
Don't
didn't
they
even
eat-
consider the Steelers either.
They signed
That's a great
Ciamalo.
shout.
Yeah, they did sign Isaac Ciamalo, but he's a guard, really.
He's a guard, and you know, so maybe that takes them off of the equation in regards to this. But as of right now, like I said, the other teams don't have a starting center.
The Steelers are kind of crazy at guard. So they drafted Kendrick Green. They signed
terrible. Kendrick Green
Oh.
is short-lived for the NFL.
All right, but they signed Nate Herbig. Last year they signed James Daniels. This year they signed Isaac Ciamalo.
Yeah.
I mean, how many guards can you have on one team at one time? My goodness.
Yeah, how bad do you feel for Herbig now? You know, he went to Pittsburgh.
Thought he'd start
with the understanding that he was a starter, and then 2 days later they signed Ciamalo.
Unbelievable.
He still starts on that line, in my opinion.
Over who?
over literally any of the guards that they have. That
Over
offensive line
Ciamalo
was
and Daniels?
They're
no,
paying James.
Ciamalo's going left guard.
They're paying James
immediately.
Daniels. They're paying James Daniels big money.
I wanted Daniels last year more than I wanted Laken Tomlinson on this team. Last year, I was saying that before Tomlinson stunk up the joint this past year. So, no, I like Daniels. I'm sorry. I can't agree with that one.
But Arizona has to replace Rodney Hudson. Seattle doesn't have a center. I don't think they've had a center since Ethan Pochich left them, and that was, 2 years ago?
Yeah, who they have? Austin Blythe last year?
Austin Blythe last year, who's free agent.
Yeah.
The Giants don't have a center.
Feliciano left.
Yep.
And so did the guy Gates, who broke his
Nick
leg.
Gates. Yeah, Nick Gates. He was a guard, right. He left.
But he was a guard and center, I believe. So
JMS is a giant, right? Like, which is sad. Like, he should already have.
You mean a New York Giant when you say that, or
Yeah.
Okay?
No, he's a New York Giant.
Context.
Yeah, like he is. I don't see how he falls past the Giants. Like the Giant, that's like unless one of the, like let's say none of the wide receivers go.
Yep.
For some reason, then you might be tempted to say, well, we desperately need wide receiver help, and JMS at 25 is kind of great value, or Johnston at 25 is kind of great value, or whoever it is. But I look at that and I go, JMS probably is a New York Giant.
Yeah.
Forgot about Daniels to Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh's line last year was so bad.
I mean, their tackles. I mean, their left tackle is Dan Moore Jr. How excited can you get about that?
And what's the other one? Okafor?
Yeah, Okafor with a first name like Chukwuma Okafor.
Yeah. So there's teams in that range that are going to be looking at centers. So, we might at 40 something, if that's the goal, if you want to bring in a center, you might have to use that second round pick to move up and grab one. You might have to. It's just the reality.
What about Jones? Did we talk about him? Because I know Billy and I were thinking that. Me and Billy SBC are thinking, weren't we talking to this guy? Didn't we have him in the building?
He was in Florham Park, from what I understand.
Yep.
That's what they said on WFAN.
So we just look, we've learned one thing from Joe D. Don't panic. We've had guys come in the building and then sign. Remember Mosley, right? The offensive lineman. I mean, everybody was freaking out. So just because we don't sign someone right away when they come into the building doesn't mean we're not going to sign them. So I think we have to be patient with that.
Yeah. I don't think
the
there's.
other.
Go ahead. After you.
I was going to say, I also look at Ben Jones as a Dwayne Brown of last year, in the sense of, I don't know if he's going to find a team until after the draft. I don't know if there's a 33-year-old center with some concussion history there, who just recently got cut because of the concussion history. I look at that and I go, maybe it's a situation where we tell Ben Jones is in the wings and day 2 comes and all the guys are gone, and then you go, all right, we pivot, we take the linebacker in the second round, we take Drew Sanders or whatever, right? And then we just go, hey, Ben, sign the contract real quick. And there you go. I look at that as possibly maybe we're waiting till the draft, like the reverse of what we might be doing with Jordan Whitehead, which is if a safety falls to us, cool. Then we can cut Jordan Whitehead. He's got 0 guaranteed money. We can get out from under that really easily. I think maybe that whole Ben Jones situation is, what's really the market for Ben Jones right now? What team is looking for a short-term center? I think all of the teams described are looking for long-term answers.
Agreed.
And maybe you do that kind of thing. I don't know.
I don't think Ben Jones. I'm not saying stylistically, but in the way they're constituted and what the team goals are, I don't think Ben Jones is a fit for Houston. I don't think he's a fit for Arizona. Those are teams that are kind of rebuilding, right?
Right.
They're, the Giants, you can argue, I know that the Giants made the playoffs last year and had a great run, but they're still only in year 2 of this rebuild. I don't think that they have any intentions of, pushing all their chips in the middle. I think Ben Jones is a stopgap, push your chips in the middle kind of center.
It makes sense for the Giants. I could see the Giants doing something like a trade for Ryan Kelly from the Colts. They made no secret that he could be available. I'm sorry, Jeremy. What's up?
No, what you're saying, I just have to acknowledge this. Obviously,
Okay.
we you know how Tom Grossi likes to do his Grossi raids. Well, Green Bean, had an impromptu show, and apparently has brought everybody over here because we are being raided by our own friend Green Bean, which suddenly pushed us up by a lot of viewers.
Oh my
So
goodness.
I just wanted to welcome everybody. I just had to acknowledge that. And also, I'm sorry to interrupt you. I just wanted to also acknowledge Ablab, who gave us the super chat. But if you want to finish your thought on the center, go ahead, Adam.
Yeah, I think Ryan Kelly makes a lot of sense. He made the Pro Bowl 3 straight years from 2019 to 2021. Now, he's scheduled to make about $12 or $13 million this season. So you might have to trade for him and rework the contract a little bit. But I think for the Giants, who have maybe a little more cap space, it could use sort of like a young veteran who isn't a one-year situation. I think Kelly makes sense for the Giants. So I would wonder if the Colts are going to hold on to Ryan Kelly or if they're going to let him go and explore the market, or if they're going to trade him. I think that's another one of the big dominoes to go in the center market.
All right, I love it. So
Didn't
getting
expect that one. That's a good one.
Yeah, and there were people mentioning, like, the good thing about it is if you get a center temporarily, then maybe we get an extra edge so we can cut Lawson, and it's such a deep draft in edge. So it's an interesting theory to say if we don't have to draft the center, we can get a replacement for Lawson where that center would have been chosen, because it really is, as per Dom C and the show we did on Sunday about a month ago, it's such a deep draft in that position for edge that you could really get someone special in the second round that could end up being a Carl Lawson type of player, which is not saying something crazy, because remember, Carl Lawson's not a guy who's getting 15 to 20 sacks a year, right? He's a guy that creates pressure, he creates disruption, and he gets 7 sacks. And I'm not putting him down. I'm just saying what he is. In a deep drafted edge, you can get a replacement that does that. And who knows, maybe JJ will be that himself. But anyway, gang, I hope you are all good. If you had to guess what trade compensation is for ARAR, how would you call it? This year's second, next year's second. Also, do you think we can get a third round back this year? So we've talked about this a couple of times, Ablab, but obviously, thank you for the super chat. We will address it directly again for you. And we'll start with, because Dom C was talking about it, and Tigo was, look, we were all talking about it. So we'll start with Dom, we'll go to Tigo, we'll go to Adam. I'm realizing I'm sitting here with three people that I've been talking about this exact topic all day with on Twitter in our private group DM. So all of these.
What private group are you talking about? People are gonna want in on this now, man. You can't talk about it. It's like Fight Club. You don't talk about Fight Club.
I'll let you guys address it, starting with Dom.
So I said this, and I stand by this, and I know this is going to be a very unpopular take, but I was always fine with moving 13 for Aaron Rodgers. I didn't want to do 13 and a second and a conditional pick that could be a first next year or something like that. But if the base of the deal was 13 for Aaron Rodgers, I was fine with it. I still am fine with it. And there's reasons for that. One, because I think 13 kind of limits the possibility of there being any extracurricular picks that are tied into it, a second or third or fourth rounder, conditionals next year, so on and so forth. So I was always fine with 13. Secondly, you guys know that I kind of fancy myself, pretty astute with this, with these prospects in the draft. And this is just not my favorite draft class. I don't think that there's really any prime picks. If there is a draft class that you don't want to have a first round pick in, I'd be completely fine with this one. That being said, now that we made this Elijah Moore deal, I don't think that 13 is even remotely on the table. I think it's going to be a second round pick, a conditional pick next year, with however you want to, lay out the parameters of the conditions, but just say it's a fourth that can turn into a third based on playing time, that can turn into a second based on how the Jets do, that can turn into a first based on, if we win the Super Bowl. So I think that's going to be the basis. You might throw Corey Davis in there as well. But I don't think 13 is going to be on the table. And now that Joe Douglas traded Elijah Moore to gain that extra second round pick, it gives me even more confidence that we're going to keep 13 and there's going to be a lot of moving and shaking done if possible. Listen, his guy might be there at 13. He might stick and pick. But I wouldn't put out, and I've said this, and these guys will tell you through our DMs. I've been saying it for a long time. Like, this is a draft that I could see Joe Douglas moving down and down and down and acquiring picks because there are depth holes to fill. We need pipeline guys. I'm fine if everyone's healthy. And you told me our starting tackles tomorrow or Mekhi Becton and Dwayne Brown. Okay, Dwayne Brown's 39 years old. So we still need. You still need that next guy to come in. And I know we have Max Mitchell, but he's not a left tackle, So you still need another guy, and Mekhi Becton, if I'm not mistaken, Adam, it's his last year of his deal. We didn't offer him the fifth year. So it's his last year of his deal. So we don't even know if Mekhi Becton, we don't know if he's going to stay healthy. We don't know if he's healthy, if he's going to come back, so we could be looking for 2 more tackles. So it makes sense that tackle is a need in this draft. I don't know if that guy is going to be at 13 or not. But yeah, so in regards to Aaron Rodgers, although I'd be completely content if it was 13, I think right now it's leaning towards one of these second round picks and a conditional pick in Corey Davis.
Yeah. I think I never thought that 13 was on the board. I never agreed with giving up 13 for all of the reasons that we know why we shouldn't give up 13. And just like you said, Dom, the moment we moved on from Elijah Moore, I think there's a couple of things with this Elijah Moore trade that aren't being talked about specifically. And I think one of the things that was happening here was I think the Green Bay Packers were saying, I think the Jets had decided that they were going to move on from Elijah Moore this offseason after seeing this trade. And I think that this was, Tom Grassi put it in his video as kind of like a joke, but I think that there's a little bit of truth to this, which is just like, look, the longer you delay this, we're not going to hold up our offseason because of you guys. Here's the deal. You wanted Elijah Moore? Cool. We were willing to give you a second and Elijah Moore for Aaron Rodgers. Well, he's not on the team anymore. You can't get Elijah Moore because he's now in Cleveland.
I don't think he was ever going to be part of the plans of Green Bay. I think that was more the Green Bay Twitter fans saying, "Oh, Elijah Moore, we want him." Green Bay has a really, really strict kind of mold of guys that they bring in for the wide receiver position. And this is known. This is not, uncommon knowledge. One of them is they don't bring in wide receivers that are under 6 feet tall.
But didn't they call on Elijah Moore and Corey Davis last year at the deadline?
Corey Davis, I know. I don't know if they called on Elijah Moore.
I remember. I might be misremembering here, but like from what I remember, the two teams that I know off the top of my head, pretty surely, I might be wrong here, was Green Bay and Cleveland. They both called on Elijah Moore last year. And last year, the asking price was a 1, right? Which is absolutely insane. Yeah. But again, I think the whole thing is I think the deal is probably going to be 42, the pick that we just got for Elijah Moore, and then a conditional 4th round pick next year that can at max become a 2, and Corey Davis. I think that's what the trade is. I think it happens sooner rather than later. Mm-hmm. And I think that this is Joe Douglas playing chess while everyone else is playing checkers. Because while you're right, Dom, when you mentioned like you do need to have a partner that's willing to come up, you only need one. There are 32 GMs, and the expectation that 32 of the 32 GMs are smart is very naive. Not all of them are very smart. We know that from firsthand experience that not all GMs are smart. And so somebody might come up for somebody, especially with New England having a couple of interesting pivot needs. Getting in front of New England might be appealing to somebody if, let's say, one of the cornerbacks fall, if Nolan Smith is there and you're a really big fan of his.
That's the thing, Tigo. Like talk it out backwards. Who's trading up? Who is somebody trading up for? All right. yeah, you could say that if what's his face falls,
Jalen Carter?
Yeah, if Jalen Carter falls, but he's not going to fall past 10 is his absolute bottom. I don't think he's going to even get to there.
Right.
Yeah, but so he's off the board, and Anderson's off the board, and the 4 quarterbacks are going to be off the board. That's 6 people right there, right? All right. So you figure 1 tackle for sure is going to be off the board, and it doesn't matter which one it is, because everyone's going to rate them different. So 1 tackle is going to be off the board for sure, right?
Okay. Agreed.
Tyree Wilson, right?
Wilson.
Might be there.
He's going to be off the board.
I think Christian Gonzalez is off the board.
Christian Gonzalez is off the board. That's 9 people right there, right? So
how about Murphy, the defensive end for?
He'll probably drop. I don't think it.
Okay.
No one's. Yeah,
I've seen him in top 10 and quite a few projected mock drafts. So just saying,
multiple.
But again, like here's the thing, Dom. Right? While I agree with you on your assessment,
but wait,
what
let me
stops
finish.
a team?
Let
Go
me
ahead, go
finish,
ahead.
Diego.
I'm
Let me
sorry, I
finish.
thought you were done.
Okay, so we're talking in that next tier of guys. So somebody could want to jump up. I agree with you, and I know we talked about it in the past. Like, New England needs a tackle, so somebody might want to jump up in front of New England to get a tackle. That would be a good spot for one. But what if Jones and Paris Johnson are off the board? Because not every team is going to have Skoronski as a tackle. That's the reality. We don't have to like it. I think he can play tackle. I've studied him like in, out, up, and down. I definitely think he can maintain tackle. But the reality is the analytics that a lot of these teams use, he doesn't check the boxes. Just like Elijah Vera Tucker when he was in the draft class. He was a tackle in college. We drafted him as a guard because he didn't have those measurables. He wasn't long enough. He didn't set that kick wasn't fast enough to really handle NFL speed on the outside, and he showed differently. Like he showed that, in year 2, he was able to do it to an extent. We haven't seen him do it for a whole year. We haven't seen him do it for a whole year on the left side. That's a whole different ball of wax. But teams just don't see guys like that. A lot of teams really, really hang on some of these measurables. They want length at the tackle. They want guys that have long arms. They want guys that are long and smooth striders, so on and so forth. So just say that Jones is off the board. You're not trading up. I mean, maybe somebody trades up for Lucas Van Ness.
But that's what I'm saying.
You can get Lucas, but I doubt it. That's what I'm trying to say. Lucas Van Ness. Yeah,
I'm just saying you never know who's going to heat up, because then I heard there was talks about Anton Harrison being the number 1 tackle taken. I mean, I understand what you're doing, Dom, and I agree that you have to have a trade partner. It's not just as simple as, we're going to trade down. And you could sit there and we could analyze and look, and from our logic say it doesn't look like there's much to justify why somebody would make that trade up. Yeah. But we also don't see their boards. It only takes one GM for some reason to have such a hard-on for a player, right? To think that's the player I have to have on my team. Whatever position it is, I've got to have that player. Like, it only takes one GM to do that, right? Yeah. So I'm not saying it's likely. I'm not saying it's likely. It would be, there are better years where this could have happened for us. But I'm just saying we don't see their boards. We watched New England take Cole Strange in the first round. We don't know how people are going to value players. Also, we've seen weird things with quarterbacks slipping, where we all are so convinced all 4 are going to go in the top 10, all 4 are going to go, and then it doesn't happen. And suddenly there's a quarterback available at 13, and somebody at 20, 19, or 18 says, holy shit, we can actually trade up and get the quarterback. We didn't think we were going to be able to do that. I'm not saying it's likely, and I'm not saying you're wrong that we're not going to be able to find a partner, but I'm not willing to say it's impossible or there's no hope for that, because like Tigo said, there are some GMs that just have boards differently and just think differently, and that shows up in the draft every year.
Mm-hmm.
And think about one thing, that what happens every year, a day or 2 before the draft. Some report comes out on some kid who's highly thought of, and in an attempt, and usually I think it's the GMs that put it out there in an attempt to make their value drop so that they could get them later on in the draft. So The only question is who's that going to be this year? Because every year it's somebody different. I mean, yeah, Tunsil's a perfect example.
We see a
so
ton of examples
Marino,
of that. Like
tons of
Justin
it.
Fields fell hard. The Bears came up to go get him, kind of a thing. Like there's a lot of those conversations and those things. And like another example of like a GM falling in love with traits instead of like production. And there's a lot of guys in this class that have some of those traits. And I'm not saying they're anywhere near this level, but like Nolan Smith ran a wide receiver time at the 40 time. He's there at 13. Some GM might fall in. Trayvon Walker went first overall a year ago based purely on what he did at the combine. You know what I mean? Like, and because he happened to be on that insane Georgia defense. Like, that's a reality of that situation. Lucas Van Ness is an insane athlete. What happens if Witherspoon is there at 13 and some team thinks that they're a cornerback away? Kind of a situation, right?
Yeah.
Like,
well, I can answer that one. I love Witherspoon. How many cornerbacks in the NFL have been drafted in the first round under 185 pounds?
Maybe Witherspoon's the wrong name.
One.
Okay.
I'm not that. And listen, Witherspoon's awesome. There's been one guy under 185 pounds that has been drafted in the first round.
Give the guy a couple of cheeseburgers. It'll be fine. No, I'm kidding. But like I'm saying, like it just takes one team to fall in love with a guy. Like Quentin Johnson has a lot of these physical traits. He is not wide receiver 1 on my board. But it just takes one GM. Jackson Smith and Ejigba, again, it takes one GM to fall in love with a guy and to think, you know what? We can be the next Bengals. I don't know what New England is going to do. Let's go get this wide receiver. Like, what's a team that has 2 wide receivers but maybe could use that third one to go over the top? You know what I mean? Like, there might be a team that is willing to do that. I'm not saying that they do this.
San Diego. I'll say that. San Diego.
Miami.
I was going to say the Chargers, but the other one, and I wouldn't want to fall this far back because I think if someone's coming up for a wide receiver, I think it's the Giants or the Chargers, and that's just me. But like, I look at it and I go, what's stopping Philly from saying, look, we got AJ, we got Smith, we were able to bring back a lot of these guys on defense. We have a top 10 pick. We have the number 10 pick. Screw it. Trade up. F them picks. Let's just go get a wide receiver. And we're not asking him to be wide receiver 1. We're asking him to be wide receiver 2 or wide receiver 3. Really push. Like, again, there are teams out there that I could be convinced to say, you know what? Maybe they want to come up. I know a lot of people are going to disagree with me on this opinion because I know that this is a super hot take that I have. But I could see a guy like Bryce Young plummeting down the board because the same thing that you said about Witherspoon, which is very true, how many quarterbacks who are under 5'10", under 185 pounds work at the next level? I could see, 1, 2, 3 going Stroud, Levis, Richardson in some kind of that order. And then Young, just like maybe the Raiders don't take Young and they push the quarterback to next year's draft where there's going to be better quarterbacks. And you know what? Certain team like the Falcons might look at it and go, you know what? We've got Ritter. Let's see what we've got. And if we're bad, we can just go get, the kid out of North Carolina and like pushing to next year's draft, which is supposed to be better at quarterback. I'm not saying that it's a super, but we've seen quarterbacks plummet. And if there's a guy that's going to fall down the board, I think it's Bryce Young because 5'10", 170, 80 pounds, soaking wet, carrying the pads of his teammates is something that terrifies me. What happens when Matt Milano runs up the middle of that field and gets him right and snaps him in half?
Yeah, I don't see. I hear what you're saying loud
Said
and
hot
clear.
take.
I hear what you're saying. I don't agree with it whatsoever.
Said hot take.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. Now, listen. The point I'm trying to make is that there, and you guys are all everything you're saying is valid. Like there's definitely. I'm not saying that there's not going to be any trade ups. I'm not. There's guys that you're always. There's always going to be somebody that you go up and get. Just where we're at, I just don't. Like I said, right now as we stand on March, whatever date today is, I don't see it. I just don't. And that's fine. Tackle. People trade up for tackles. People trade up for wide receivers. And I just think that the top of this draft class in both of those positions it's not the strongest. That's all.
Yeah, and look, I don't think it's the best draft for us to land like a really big trade in this position. Like I think we got screwed. There's bad luck in a few different ways. Like I think we got screwed in the depth of the positions that are deep in this draft that don't match our needs. That sucks for us.
Yeah.
And I think it sucks for us that 13 seems to be in a spot where it might be really hard to get any real kind of value in a trade back. But at the same time, I'm not going to rule out what Tigo's saying. I know that there's a possibility that someone could slip or that a GM with a totally different board than other GMs might do something crazy and get emotional, because we've seen, even though we think, oh, they're professionals, they're GMs of NFL teams, we've seen some GMs do some really stupid things, especially as Jet fans, because sometimes, unfortunately, those GMs work for us. I'm gonna let Adam chime in here because he's been sitting there quietly forever, and I know he's got something to say about it.
Oh no, I just get the entertainment out of watching Tigo and Dom go back and forth, vehemently disagreeing with one another. I just find it entertaining.
I think we're agreeing. I think we're agreeing differently because we're both making the same point, just getting to a different. We're getting to the same answer differently. That's what's happening.
At least 2 or 3 times, Dom has said, "I completely disagree with you, Tigo." That is not agreeing differently.
But that's okay. That's okay. We don't have
beauty
I
of
didn't
it.
hear it.
Yeah,
I didn't hear it. Me and Dom in sync a whole way.
Oh yeah. People,
at the end of the day, we're all brothers.
We did get 60, 70 people coming over from Green Beans Channel to hear us play lovey-dovey and agree on everything. Come on, where's the fun in that?
You're right. You're wrong, Adam. Whatever you're about to say.
I'm never wrong except when I speak and give an opinion. But anyway, no, it wasn't like.
I will be right back. Sorry.
Okay, Dom's being called. Dom might have late breaking draft news, so I can't wait to get this report. But agreeing differently. Yeah, we're gonna call this the Agreeing Differently show. That's what this episode's gonna be. Is gonna be titled. We're gonna really have a whole bunch of options. Now we have seen Joe really trade up quite extensively, but not trade down as often. But his trades are rarely a pick for a pick. It's always, I'll give you this and this to get this. And we saw it today with the Elijah Moore trade. But we haven't seen him trade down a lot in the draft that I could think of. Not a whole lot of times. There might be an opportunity here, like Jeremy was talking about, to do that. And maybe even acquire picks for next season when the draft is a little bit better. The problem I have with that, though, is as Jets fans, we should expect right now we're going to have better draft positions this year than we're going to next season. Well, we sure as hell better not be picking in the top 13 in the 2024 draft. So to me, I think this is a time when I think about where this team is, where it needs to be. If Aaron Rodgers comes here, you might have fewer picks, but this is a situation where I'm almost feeling quality over quantity. I feel like we have to go with the best players we can get. I know we need a pipeline and whatnot. You know what? We could do undrafted free agency. There'll be guys who are going to get cut that we can bring in. Pittsburgh may not keep Jonathan Marshall, for instance. I mean, yeah, there's like this. We've got this single white female obsession going on with guys like Jonathan Marshall. God bless him. But come on, Pittsburgh didn't play him last season. He wasn't even active after they took him away. So there are guys that you can get later, and Joe Douglas has proven he can get guys like that. So to me, I expect one of these top 3 picks to go for Aaron Rodgers. Probably one of the twos, like Tigo said, like Dom said. I'm on the same page with y'all. So I really want to see us use. I don't want to see us trade out of the first round. I really don't. Even if this isn't the top class, I want plug and play guys this season, because this may be this year and the year after maybe our next shot, because we don't know how much of Aaron Rodgers we're going to get. It's going to be year to year with him, unless they rework the contract completely and say, make it like absolutely really difficult for Rodgers to retire. Either that, or if he does retire and the Jets like get out of the contract or have very little, of a cap hit, they'd have to come up with some sort of a situation like that. But I want him to have a 2-year deal. I don't want Aaron Rodgers for a year. I want 2 shots at least at this. So that means I need plug and play guys. I don't want a bunch of 5th and 6th round picks in the next 2 years. It doesn't make sense. That's why I'm glad we moved up from the 3rd round to the 2nd round pick, even if it cost us Elijah Moore. I think it's going to be worth it.
But to really just answer the question that Ablab asked about a half an hour ago, I think that there's a strong possibility we're going to give a 2nd round pick out of the 2, and that's why we traded for 1, and we're going to give it to Green Bay.
Right.
As far as next year, I think that there's a strong possibility if there's a 2nd round pick or any kind of pick involved next year, I think it's going to be contingent on either the success we had with Aaron Rodgers, but to me, more realistically, contingent upon whether he retires or not. And then when you ask about the possibility of us trading down and replacing that 3rd round pick, whether it's the 13th pick or finding a way to get that 13th pick, I think it's a strong possibility. We know JD loves draft picks. We know how much he's building this team and wants to keep the pipeline filled with young players. But at the same time, we learned last year that he also values high-quality players.
Right.
So he's not going to just go volume over quality because he's willing to narrow down the amount of picks but really hit. And when I say really hit, I'm talking about Sauce Gardner, Garrett Wilson, JJ, Breece Hall, Michael Clemens, Max Mitchell, and Ruckert, who looked great, by the way, against Miami in the one game he did play.
He did.
Quality picks, right, also matters to Joe Douglas, which basically means we don't know nothing because he doesn't have one particular predictable style. He is going to do what's best at the moment. If at the moment there's a chance for high value, he will go for high value. If he's in an area of the draft where he doesn't think the value's there, he'll go for the volume of picks later where there is a better balance of volume.
And remember what people were saying after the first 2 Joe Douglas drafts. He doesn't value cornerbacks. Remember that narrative? That was being pushed, and it was being pushed hard. And that's one reason why a lot of people were shocked when Joe took Sauce 4th overall. But why did he take him? Because, most of us, I think, would have acknowledged Sauce Gardner probably had the highest floor of just about any player in that draft last season. And they felt he was the right pick. He was going to make the biggest impact because, again, here's one of the biggest things we need to remember. Guys, when we're doing our mock drafts, when we're scouting players, when we try to have the mentality of, okay, I want to put this position here, I want to get this position in this round. You can't always do that because it's not always about making a terrible position passable. Sometimes it's about taking an okay position and making it really good. And that's what we did at cornerback. Bryce Hall was a good starting cornerback. I know it's hard to remember sometimes after what we saw this year, but he was fine. Eccles was fine. Bless Austin. Okay, different story. But you had those guys, and they saw an opportunity. And they signed DJ. Okay. And they saw an opportunity to take it to another level, and they did that with Sauce. So we can't just remember I'm going to quote one of the greatest of all time, Roddy Piper. Just when they think that they've got the answers, I change the questions. That is what Joe Douglas is doing. He keeps changing the narrative. He takes it to a different spot just when you got him figured out. Guys, we're all predicting when the Aaron Rodgers trade is going to break. It's going to break when absolutely nobody expects it. And it's going to be for a package that absolutely none of us are thinking is going to be possible. There might be a 2nd round pick, but there will be a wrinkle in there somewhere where we're like, I didn't see that coming, but okay, I can see that. I can get behind it. I get it. So remember, Joe, we have no idea how Joe Douglas does what he does, but he has proven many, many times he can get the job done, especially in a trade. And even in a situation where he is in his most public negotiation yet as a general manager, he's not going to allow himself to get hoodwinked in this situation. The Packers need to make this trade just as much as the Jets do. And that's something that certain cheddar heads don't seem to be able to get through their skulls right about now.
And Roddy Piper was indeed the best.
Yes. Oh, thanks, Billy. I appreciate it.
So here's an interesting tidbit, completely off the beaten path that just came in.
Go for it.
Indianapolis Colts defensive tackle DeForest Buckner has requested a trade to a contender.
Whoa.
Wow.
Woo! DeForest Buckner wants to be traded again?
29 years old.
Man.
Cap number, well, that's what I'm looking at right now. He has 2 years left remaining for $39 million. However, zero money guaranteed. So it's all base salary, can easily be adjusted or renegotiated.
Ooh, that
Wonder if he'd want to play with Saleh.
Dom, who's reporting this?
It's in like a rumors thing, NFL rumors.
NFL rumors? Okay.
Still interesting.
Yeah.
Sign me up.
Not saying he's going to get traded. I said he's requested a trade. So I'll take that with a grain of salt. But like I said, the Colts, I don't know where their cap issues are. I'm trying to look that up right now. But they would save $19.75 million in cap space if they moved him.
We need that defensive tackle, but you know what? On the other hand, we gotta pay number 95 at some point. I know, like at some point, we got to extend him. If we were to bring in DeForest Buckner for a whole lot of money, but Quinnen doesn't have his contract, how's that going to look? That's not a good optic.
I think it more likely happens that you trade for. Here's the thing: that deal with Quinnen is going to get done, right? Like,
I thought you were just going to say you trade Quinn Williams, and I was going to hang up. I was going to
absolutely
leave.
not. You kick me off the stream if I ever say that.
That's not a hot take. That's a napalm take.
Yeah, no,
that's a take from hell,
guys. If I ever say trade Quinnen Williams, I need y'all to call the cops. That's my signal, letting you know that there's a guy off screen with a gun. If I ever text, "Hey, we should trade Quinnen Williams," you call the cops immediately.
Like Mrs. Tego, run!
There are two players on this roster that are sacred. They are both on the defensive side of the ball. That's Sauce and Quinnen. If I ever come in here and I go, "Hey, 100% serious here, trade Quinnen and Sauce," call the cops. I'm being held hostage.
Tego, that's
a Packers fan holding you hostage. That's what that is.
That is the greatest code red I have ever heard in my life, and I am stealing it. If anybody ever hears me say trade Quinnen Williams or don't extend him, he's not worth it, it means I need you to call 911 and save my life. Thank you. That is beautiful. I love it.
Right. Did you order the code red? Did you order the code red?
You're damn straight. I ordered the code red. I gotta go. I'm gonna dip out. You guys keep talking. I am gonna run and my wife, because I told her I finally got my appetite back today, just cooked me a hell of a meal. I could smell it. So she left it on the stairs because, as those of you might not know, I am COVID positive, so I'm upstairs quarantining, and I am about to go down and get that dinner that's waiting on the stairs for me before a mouse or a bug gets it. So I'll be right back, guys.
Fair enough.
All right.
But what I was gonna say before blasphemous things were being said about Quinnen Williams being traded, what I was gonna say is with his deal not really being guaranteed, and here's the thing. I think they don't take a dead cap hit if they cut him at all. DeForest Buckner. They don't take a dead cap hit if they trade him. From what I'm seeing on Spotrac, it says that they have a 0 dead cap hit this year and next year.
Yeah, because it's all base salary. They've paid him out all the guarantees already.
So if that's true, and I'm not saying that this is going to happen or whatever, but like, I could see a world in where you trade for him and maybe extend him to lower, because he has no guarantees left. He has none of that stuff. You can trade for him and then be like, here's a new, because he is 29.
You can trade. You can work out a trade for him and then just say, even before you make the trade possible or make the trade effective, you just rev up the deal and make a new deal for him. That's exactly what they're going to do with Rodgers.
Yeah, absolutely.
I don't think we're going to see Rodgers come in at this contract.
No, I disagree. Yeah, I agree. I don't think he comes in at this contract at all. But what I'm saying is, for a guy like a DeForest Buckner, who's insanely good as a defensive tackle, I don't think he's going to come in at 18, not at 30 in that situation. Like, that just doesn't compute. And so now you're telling me him coming in at 15, 16? That makes a little bit more sense at this age, coming to a contender. that might make a lot more sense. And so I think you can trade for him and give him a whole new deal. Look at like a 4-year deal where like the first 3 years or the first 2.5 years are guaranteed, kind of a situation in that sense. And I could totally see a deal like that happening. And then also paying Quinnen, because now I feel way more comfortable in our defensive tackle room. Now I don't feel like we need to go. Like, I was seriously looking at Kalijah Cansey at 13. Like, legitimately, like, if Broderick Jones is there, I might pass up on Jones to go get Kalijah Cansey because I don't know what we're going to do at defensive tackle. Because this class is so weak, in my opinion, at defensive tackle. Outside of the top 4 or 5 guys, I don't know if any of those guys can come in and be anything like more than rotational guys. And what we're looking for is a starter. And that's why I think this fan base has gone so gung-ho on guys like Calais Campbell, Ioannidis, guys that we think that could actually start versus like, I love me some Mazzy Smith and I love me some the possibility and the upside of Bressie and what happens if Jalen Carter is there at 13 and can Kalijah Cansey do it at 6 foot? You know, Aaron Donald did it and he was also from Pitt, maybe, but like those are a lot of what ifs there. And that's a lot of things falling in the right place for a position that we know is so important for this defense.
And Buckner just turned, Buckner actually just turned 29 years old last week. His birthday is actually on St. Patrick's Day. That's quite the day to have a birthday. But for me, I would love Mozzie Smith, and I felt like he would be like a 3rd round pick. I know Dom does too. And now I'm thinking to myself, are we in position to still take does it make sense to take him in the 2nd round in the 40s, or are we pressing our luck a little bit with that one?
No, it absolutely does.
I'm still hoping for it, man. I want to draft that starting defensive tackle in the worst way. Hey, I would still be. They want to get Campbell, fine. And you guys probably know I'm a Poona Ford guy. I would be happy to sign him from Seattle for a reasonable contract. I think he would be a good plug and play guy for a little bit too. But yeah, I definitely feel like they have to bring 2 guys in. I mean, I could deal with Solomon Thomas as my 4, but I do not want Solomon Thomas as my primary backup defensive tackle at all.
I don't think you're going to see it. I still there's a lot of free agency left to come. Guys like Poona Ford, Alshon Robinson, Ioannidis, like Tigo talked about. Those guys are going to be on a team.
I was just diagnosed with Ioannidis not that long ago when I went to the doctor.
They're going to these guys are going to be on rosters. They're probably just waiting for certain financial ramifications for the team to happen. Like I said, the Jets aren't done making cap space. They got plenty of options to do it. They're not done. We're not going into the season with Tanzel Smart as our, defensive tackle. That's our rotational defensive tackle. We're not doing it.
Highly unlikely. I want to respond to Braden's post. Said, take Lucas Van Ness and kick JFM inside. I'm not going to bore you with all the numbers, but I did look. Nanny actually put an article out on Jets X a couple weeks ago. And it was interesting. JFM was actually more productive playing outside this year than he was inside. And he played outside about 75% of the time. But per play, he was actually better on the outside. So this might be one time, it happens rarely, where the coaching staff might have had it right over the majority of the fan base. It seems like we were the ones begging for him to go inside. But that's not where he played his most productive football this year. So.
I wasn't. I think me and Dom were the only people out there pounding the drum. JFM is better outside. He has that ability, but that doesn't mean he should play inside.
He can rush. He can rush from inside.
He can do either one, but yeah, he could do either one. But yeah, this year definitively he had better numbers playing on the edge than playing defensive tackle. So
last year too, every year that he's like he got paid as an edge. That's where he got his contract. Was playing on the outside. That's where he's effective. Yeah. Like, I understand that he can play inside, right? But that doesn't mean DJ Reed can play slot corner, right? And that doesn't mean he should. He's an outside guy. That's like that kind of thing. Michael Carter II can play free safety. I don't want him there. Think he's better as a slot corner. It's those kinds of conversations. Just because a guy can doesn't mean he should. Elijah Vera Tucker is a great example. He can play tackle. I still want him at guard.
Yeah.
Everybody,
Be right back.
please respect this Green Bay Packer fan because he's not trolling. He's trying to have a real conversation.
I'll let Adam take it first.
I'll
What are
answer,
we?
but I need to pee. I'll be right back.
What are we going to do at quarterback? Yeah, we're just going to bring Brett Favre back from retirement. I'm sure that's what we'd wind up doing. You know what? In all seriousness, the Packers are not going to keep him on the roster and not play him. Eventually, they would have to pay that $58 million option. The cap hit, I believe, is $40 million if he stays on the team. And I just don't think the Packers are going to want to do that. They've committed to Jordan Love at this point. Rodgers has made it clear he does not want to be back. They feel they've moved on from him. The Packers' actions have reflected it. How does it look for the Packers? How are they going to be perceived around the league and by players and by coaches if they have basically said we're moving on, thank you for your time, but we're done, but then they won't actually accommodate his request to trade him? That other players are really going to look down on the Packers organization as a whole, and that's not something that the Packers are a very respected organization. This has a chance to really kick them right in their own butt. So the Packers need to handle this. They need to think about the big picture, not just their immediate interests and the compensation. Their reputation is going to be on the line here. Now, what would the Jets do at quarterback if Rodgers didn't work out? I can't wait for Cooper Rush to come over and save the day.
He signed with Dallas.
He did sign with Dallas. I didn't see that. Yeah, Marcus Mariota. I mean, we know he's on the market.
He signed with the Eagles.
Yep.
Okay, and let's see who else can we talk. Brian Hoyer. Anybody sign his ass yet?
Brian Hoyer's available.
He is retired and gone to the XFL.
That's pretty much what I figured. It'll be this year in the XFL championship game. It'll be Brian Hoyer against Tommy Maddox.
Do you want the list? I'll give you the list of the free agent.
I don't think I do. Yeah, go ahead.
Carson Wentz, Teddy Bridgewater, Matt Ryan, the corpse of Joe Flacco, Brian Hoyer, Mason Rudolph, Blaine Gabbert, Trevor Siemian, Nathan Peterman, Jeff Driscoll, Nate Sudfeld, Josh Johnson, Chase Daniel, Trace McSorley, John Wolford, Tim Boyle, Brett Rippon, and the almighty Bryce Perkins. I will answer that question from the Packers fan, and thanks for coming in here, dude. We're not gonna. We're here to talk ball. We don't care if it's with Jet fans, Packer fans, just as long as you're not a Patriots fan.
That's right.
So the reality is that the quarterback would then probably come from another team. I would assume
that list. I'm going Bridgewater. If I have to go,
if I'm going off that list, it's probably Bridgewater. He has experience in the team, so on and so forth. However, the reality is that you probably start kicking the tires of the guys like, all right, can we make Matt Stafford fit? Is Kirk Cousins really available? Is, this guy or that guy, so on and so forth. But,
I think the reality of what was just spoken by that Packers fan is the reason why we're probably going to have to give a second round pick. He just has it mixed up and thinking we have to give a first round pick. The reason for this is very simple. Yes, the Jets have to have this deal go through. They need a quarterback. But you're forgetting the other side of this. The Green Bay Packers need this deal to go through.
Yeah.
Desperately. They cannot move on. It's going to hurt their reputation. It's going to hurt their standing with Aaron Rodgers. And it's already hurting their team because it's impacting their free agency. The reality is both teams need it to happen. That is why it's not going to be a fourth round pick that we would want it to be. And JD, I'm sure, wanted it to be. And it's not going to be a first round pick that Green Bay wants it to be. And it's why we just traded for an extra second round pick. Because guess what? That's what you're getting, buddy. At least that's my opinion.
Yeah. I think, when I look at this, I go, that's the whole thing is that I don't necessarily, I know I might be in the minority here in this way of thinking. I know that no other team is going to get involved with the trade, and that the Green Bay Packers don't want Aaron Rodgers just showing up at camp. And me and Dom talked about this earlier, and where we agreed differently, as I like to say, about whether or not he shows up. Like, the longer this goes on, the worse it'll look for both organizations, because then the Jets are going to look cheap, the Packers are going to look petty, and Aaron Rodgers ultimately has a lot of friends still in that locker room, and he can slowly but surely. I hate using this word because I don't think this is what Aaron Rodgers is to a locker room, but he can slowly but surely start turning into a locker room type of cancer, because they're like, dude, you guys want to move on from me. I want to move on from you guys. But you're forcing me to be here. And like 50% of these guys are my friends. I'm just supposed to be a good guy and just hang out and like be nice to the organization that like gave me the middle finger. And so the longer that this goes on, the worse it'll look for everybody. But I look at this and go, ultimately, I think the Packers are going to blink first, because they can't have him show up to camp. And I think he's going to show up to camp. And because of that, I think it gets done for a second-round pick. And I'm so confident in that I don't care about the backup plan, because I don't think we need one. I think Aaron Rodgers, I feel so confident that it's going to happen. And if not, I look at it and I go, like, there are other options. You can pivot, and I don't like these options, but you can pivot to Lamar. I'm not a fan of that, but you can. Teddy Bridgewater is a viable option. You can probably go and get Stafford. Like, that's a real thing that you can probably go trade for. Am I in love with that? Now with those injuries, I'm worried about it. But there are moves and there are guys that are theoretically available that you can pivot from. Hell, Mac Jones is available. Now, I'm not saying to go get Mac Jones, but that's there. Like, there are quarterbacks that are available for trade that we talked about it all of last season. Like, if we had top 20 quarterback play, we're in the playoffs. And I think you can get that from Cam Newton is trying to come back. I'm not saying to do it, but like, you get the point. There are other options, because we don't need. Aaron Rodgers is our Super Bowl hope. That's why we're all in on Aaron Rodgers. But if we just want to get to the playoffs, I'm cool with running it with Teddy for a year.
Yeah,
I want Aaron.
And also to those who would want to actually draft a quarterback. Wow,
that's a great tag.
I think
kudos to you, Matt.
I think that's either FM or BYU fan. It's probably one of the two. That's probably their burner.
That made me laugh, man. That made me laugh.
Wow,
that's so good.
Super chats cut the line. Just had to say it. But
man, that's so good.
Whatever it was I was going to say, I can't remember anymore, because who cares at this point?
We were thinking about his receding hairline.
That's all I can think. I'm like, I didn't know. It's like I knew. I didn't know Jake and Stephen A. Smith had so much in common. But work at ESPN and the hairline. But I know he's working on. Wasn't that one of his sponsors? He has like a hairline sort of thing. It's like a sponsor that he had for a little bit on one of his shows. Whatever. But supposedly,
Jake Assman passively.
Yeah, that's a sponsor situation. Graham, oh, yes, the whole draft idea. I can't go back to drafting a quarterback in the first round this soon. You know, I've got PTSD right now going on. I think a lot of Jets fans do, from all the times that we've been burned. I just can't draft a quarterback right now. And I'm not going to use the easy excuse of, well, the Jets can't develop a quarterback. They haven't developed a quarterback since Joe Namath. It's hogwash, okay? That has nothing to do with Douglas, with Saleh, and so on. They've attempted that with one quarterback. It did not work out. But that doesn't mean they're responsible for the entire litany of quarterbacks who came before that. So I feel like there's a very, very tiny but loud 1% of the fan base who wants to see the Jets draft a quarterback. I can't see the situation where I would do that. I would just go with the 1-year veteran with a stopgap and go from there, and just try to get a decent quarterback play and build up around it and go from there.
Yeah. I don't see a single quarterback in this draft.
Snowball. No. Tom Brady. Hell no. Sorry, but I had to say that. The only thing that annoys me more than the idea of Beckham on the Jets is Tom Brady on the Jets. My God.
Back to what I was saying. I look at it and I go, there's not a single quarterback in this class outside of the top 4 guys, right? But none of them are realistically going to be there at 13, and I'm not taking any of them this year. I don't look at a single quarterback in this draft and be like, we should take this guy in the 2nd or this guy in the 3rd, or like, even if like, oh, we should take this guy in the 6th. I was like, I'd rather keep all of my picks and use them on players than use a single one of those picks on a quarterback. There's like, the one that infuriates me, and I saw it a couple of times, is like we should draft Hendon Hooker. Nope. Taking a developmental 45-year-old quarterback who comes from an anti-NFL scheme. It's like last night at the 10 o'clock mock for Ryan, someone was like, take Stetson Bennett. I was like, isn't Stetson Bennett older than Tom Brady? What happened? Wasn't he about to be benched in the middle of the year before he turned it around at Georgia? Like, come on.
Oh, man.
I love McCole Hardman. I love that pick. I love that signing.
Yeah, I would love. Oh, by the way, I have somebody who keeps saying he's going to come on, and I'm waiting for him. It's our friend Chiefs Live. I keep looking for him. I don't see him in here.
We saw him in the chat.
He was going to give us an entire perspective of how he feels about this young man, some of the injury problems and struggles he's had, which has slowed him down, and give us more perspective of understanding. Because, I mean, he was a 2nd-round pick, and as you know, he was obviously expected to do a lot more than he's done when you look at his stats. I would think when you make a 2nd-round pick. But I did watch some of his highlights, and I want to say, even though he hasn't lived up to the billing with, as far as when you look at the stats, he's a major home run hitter. I mean, he's a home run hitter. He takes the top off the defense. And to me, that's going to be fairly exciting. I'm excited about having a wide receiver that could just be a rocket and go deep, especially if you have A-Rod, because now you have a quarterback who can actually, in stride, hit that receiver.
I mean, we've seen the evidence that Aaron Rodgers will take a no-name receiver and make him competent. I mean, we could go through the litany of receivers he's thrown the ball to. I mean, Jay Kumaro, Jeff Janis. I mean, guys that nobody outside of like diehard Packers fans have ever heard of. I mean, to me, there's no reason he can't do it with a Denzel Mims. Why he can't do it with some 6th or 7th round receiver we draft from friggin' Fort Hays State or Grand Canyon University or, who knows where. Yeah, Princeton. I wonder who you have in mind. Yeah, Florida Atlantic University, for crying out loud. So to me, I don't see the need to go get another premium wide receiver early in the draft. I've got all the confidence in Aaron Rodgers. He's going to elevate it. I want to spend those picks on the line. I got to make sure Rodgers is protected and has the time that he needs to throw the ball. We know he can get rid of it quickly, but just give him a chance to read the defense and shred them apart like he's done for 15 years.
Yeah. I look at it, and with McCole Hardman, there's a joke that a couple of my buddies have when we play fantasy every year, and we call McCole Hardman the extreme sports pick because trying to figure out when McCole Hardman is going to have his 110-yard, 2-touchdown game is like playing an extreme sport because you can never predict when it's going to happen because he has that capability because he's such a like a burner. Like he just needs to catch the ball 2 times and he can be over 100 yards. Like literally that's it.
Yep.
But it's just like it's a joke that we all have. The moment that we signed him, he beat you, Dom, but it didn't click in my mind because his text came in and then your tweet came in, your DM came in. So I was like, I have to go beat Ian. I got to go record the video. And I went sprinting and I literally came back and I was just like, picking him is like an extreme sport because you never know. He can catch the ball twice, 2 touchdowns, 110 yards, and then for 5 games after that, 6 catches, 3 yards, -2 touchdowns. Like but I love the idea of McCole Hardman, and if it can work out in New York with, because again, I've been playing that extreme sport with McCole Hardman, so I've watched a lot of McCole Hardman for a long time, especially because I'm the crazy guy that takes, especially, I'm the crazy guy that takes Patrick Mahomes in the second.
I felt that way about having Gabe Davis on my fantasy team this year. Felt the same way.
I love the idea of Gabe Davis just because he's a UCF alum. But again, it's also an extreme sport. Is he going to catch 8 passes for 95 yards and 2 touchdowns, or is he going to catch 12 passes for 8 yards?
I can assure you, he definitely didn't have a game where he had 12 catches. He'll have 3 catches a game. You just hope one of them is for 75 yards and a touchdown. That's the existence of having Gabe Davis on a fantasy team. And Isaiah McKenzie was like a lesser version of him this past season. Oh my gosh. So yeah, let's see what else is going on in the chat. You guys got any? By the way, if you guys have any questions or any topics that you want us to talk about, feel free to throw them down there in the chat. We want to make sure that we're talking about stuff that you all are interested in. So, can still groom Zach. All we're missing is Jets forever. Joe Namath said, and Snowball, Adam, Joe Namath said Rodgers could have number 12. Why not Brady? I know Joe Namath would give number 12 to the cheater, but no, I have nothing personal against Aaron Rodgers. I have everything personal against Tom Brady. It's not complicated.
So our guest is here. So we were just talking about him.
All right.
Right.
On that note,
I'm
going to bounce too. I gotta get up early in the morning anyway. So if you have the guest,
okay,
I'll step out so there's not too many people here. I appreciate you having me on. It's always a pleasure to talk with my brothers and with the chat. So I'll catch you guys later.
Thank you so much, Domsday. I appreciate
See you later, buddy.
you coming today, man.
No problem, man.
And here is Chiefs Live. Now, for those of you who don't know, Chiefs Live has been a friend of the show for a long time. He's always getting great perspectives. I think Chiefs, there's a couple of things we'd love to talk to you about today. And one, obviously, is our newest jet that comes from Kansas City, but also just the perspective of the Chiefs when you see this happening with the Jets and how much you see us as a potential threat or a competitor in the AFC East. So welcome, Chief.
Thank you. Can you guys hear me fine?
Yeah.
All good.
Okay. You know, it's funny. His nickname is actually Jet. That's actually his nickname. But McCole Hardman, he's a guy he played that gadget role for the Chiefs offense, and I think that's where he's best at. Everyone knows about the speed. He has vertical speed. He has deep speed. And I really do think he's going to help your guys' offense a lot because, you know, the Chiefs, they kind of used him as like this, what do you call it? I'm trying to find the right word. They kind of used him as like, he was just overall, he was the guy with NVS that would take, you know, the top off of defenses and really help this Chiefs offense. So you guys are getting a good player. He dealt with some injuries early this past season. And we really didn't get to see him on the field in the second half of the season. He played in the AFC Championship game, but left the game due to an injury. He didn't play in the Super Bowl. But I think, you know, his best fit is as that gadget player for you guys' defense, you guys' offense, excuse me.
Yeah, I was looking at the stats and I saw, so he's played 4 years in the league, and the first 3 years he played every single game of the season. It's like he had this one, I believe it was a pelvic injury. It was like a core muscle sort of an injury. Okay, and that's what kind of derailed him.
Yeah. So, yeah.
Yeah. What I wanted to ask. Yeah, go ahead with that. Then I got a question for you. Go ahead. Just into the nature of that injury. Do you think he's good?
No, you're good.
What do you think about the recovery for him? I'm sorry.
You're good, man. So he had surgery after the Super Bowl. I think he should be good by training camp. I don't know what he had surgery on or anything like that, but he should be good by training camp. But he did have surgery after the Super Bowl.
Okay, sounds good. Now, was he the primary punt and kick returner for the Chiefs? I know he was doing some returning. How is he? How would you rate him as a return man?
He's pretty good. Earlier in his career, we kind of used him more as a kick returner, punt returner, and I do think he can fill that role pretty good for you guys.
Okay.
I do have a question though. Where do you guys think you guys are going to play him? As like a gadget or like a Like, where do you think he fits in with your guys' offense?
Right now, primary slot receiver. I think that's one reason they let go of Morris to have a clear because you have Wilson, Lazard, and Davis right now on the outside. Mims really isn't the slot. I feel like Hardiman is the main slot guy at this point. So, yeah, do you think that'd be a good fit for him at this point?
Yeah, because the Chiefs tried him outside, and it wasn't, he was going through a lot of ups and downs when he was on the outside. In 2021, he lined up mostly in the slot. So the slot, yeah, that seems right for McCole Hardman.
All right.
But I do think, he's going to be that gadget player for you guys.
I think statistically, if you look at him, he had most of his success in the slot. If you break it down from
Slot,
alignments. But I honestly, we know that Nathaniel Hackett doesn't like slot receivers. Like, he doesn't like using slot receivers. And that's where I think when you were saying at the top, when you were talking about him, I look at him more as like what we did with Braxton Berrios, a lot of, which is obviously a name that you might not be super familiar with, but that's the way that I look at it, which is the gadget guy, the jet sweep guy, the, shallow crossing route guy, you play him at the Z so he has space from the corner so that he can really get going and take the top off of a defense kind of a guy. I just don't know how much time he'll play necessarily in the slot just because we don't play. I don't think Hackett's going to play a slot very often. That being said,
I understand.
Chiefs Live, it was awesome
go ahead, my bad.
meeting you, but I'm going to dip out.
Okay.
Just wanted to say hi because you're always in chat, but I got to get out of here.
Thanks for joining us, Tigo, man. We appreciate all you bring.
Thanks for helping out, Tigo.
Have a good night, Tigo.
Yep.
Appreciate you.
And actually, I got a stat for you real quick on and Hardiman and Chiefs Live. Feel free to respond. Since 2019, the only wide receiver to average more yards after the catch per reception than Hardiman is Deebo Samuel.
Deebo Samuel. Yeah, I saw that stat too. I was like, wow. Yeah, that's what he's best at. And like Tigo said, he's like he's not an X, but he's a slot or a Z. He's a really good Z. He can play in the slot, but he's a gadget player. That's just where he's best at, in my opinion.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, go ahead. Definitely sounds like a piece we could use on the offense.
Oh, my bad. No, but I was gonna say I'm kind of surprised that the Chiefs let Juju go. And McCole Hardman. I thought both those deals were affordable for the Chiefs, but yeah, man. So you guys are getting a good player, McCole Hardman. I'm kind of surprised that the Chiefs did not bring him back. I thought he would be back this year, but yeah, man. So I like McCole. You guys are gonna like McCole. That speed, man. When he gets going, it's hard to catch up to McCole Hardman because that speed definitely jumps out when you're watching him. And yeah, man. So you guys are getting a good player in McCole Hardman.
All right, fantastic. Jeremy, I hate to catch you in between mid bites, but did you have any particular questions for Chiefs Live? I'm looking at the chat to see if you guys have any questions for Chiefs Live about McCole Hardman.
Well, I think he said a lot about him. If we see any more questions, we'll ask. But what I really want to know, being that you're the Super Bowl champion, the AFC ruled the AFC East for the last few years. The Chiefs are the team. You're a fan of the team. You're very knowledgeable about football and other teams. You've been part of this channel, so you know a lot about what's going on with the Jets. You've seen us, in this rebuild for the last 2 years. Now you see A-Rod and Aaron Rodgers very close to joining the team. Knowing about our team and knowing that Aaron Rodgers is close to joining, and assuming our offensive line doesn't get decimated again, how do you see us? Like, how much of a threat are we?
I see you guys as a contender for sure because you have Aaron Rodgers, you have Breece Hall who's coming back off a torn ACL. He was having a really good year before that injury. You have Garrett Wilson, you have McCole Hardman, Alan Lazard. I don't know if Corey Davis is going to get cut. That's actually something I want to ask you guys. Do you guys think Corey Davis will get cut?
Every day I go back and forth on this. It's a situation where I understand saving the $10 million. And sometimes I feel like it makes sense to include him in the trade if that's something the Packers want to do. Although I think they have a pretty good rookie combination between Christian Watson and Romeo Doubs.
Watson and Rob Dubs, yeah.
Yeah, so to me, I don't know if I feel like Davis would have the same role there than he has here, and it's like why do the Packers want him? What does he bring to them that they don't already have with these two kids? I don't have an issue with Davis being on the team still. I don't, because I'm not comfortable with Denzel Mims as my 4. I feel a little bit better with him as my 5. And you know what? I've always been a Davis fan. I mean, I make no bones about it. My one issue with him is his durability.
Yeah.
And again, these receivers are all going to be better when you go from Zach Wilson to Aaron Rodgers in the most obvious statement in the history of civilization.
Right.
So, I mean, I'm good with Corey staying on the team, but there are needs that still need to be addressed. And if you need some of that money to address defensive tackle, to, address an off-ball linebacker, to address center, then you know what? You got to do it.
Right. And that was a question back with the Titans. I think, he missed a lot of games there with the Titans. But, yeah, man, I do see the Jets as a contender, especially with Aaron Rodgers. You guys, that defense with DJ Reed as your other corner, you have Sauce. That defensive line, man. That defensive line's hopefully, man. I like Carl Lawson. Jermaine Johnson, I like. He was productive when he got, he didn't play much, but he was productive when he got a chance to play.
Right.
I see you guys as contenders, man, especially with that defense, because that defense is really good. That defense is really good.
We don't know what this is like. We don't know. It's like contenders. Yeah, that's a nice idea, but we don't really know what it looks like anymore. Not for teams wearing green. Chiefs Live, do you realize the last time the Jets had a game on NBC was the butt fumble game?
Against the Patriots back in 2012?
Exactly. That's how long it's been
man.
since we've had a Thursday, an NBC game, and that was Thanksgiving. I mean, we don't get these types. Our last Monday night game was Sam Darnold's debut against the Lions when we whooped up on him.
I still can't believe that game.
None of us can. The next morning, I wasn't even listening to New York sports radio. I was turning on all the Detroit stations. I just had to hear their reaction. And that's when I first heard Mike Valenti, who does a football show with Boomer Esiason, which is, by the way, fantastic before every NFL week. And the funny thing is he was from Long Island and he grew up a Giants fan and he's working in Detroit. And I still remember his opening line. He said, "Last night, on national TV, you got to see what 53 anuses look like," referring to the Lions.
You know what? The funny part about that was Matt Patricia's first game as the Lions head coach.
Oh my God. He was ready to give up on Patricia even before that game. Yeah, Patricia's coming out on the side wearing a garbage bag around him. I mean, oh my God. That's a long way from Tom Landry wearing a suit on the sideline. I can tell you that.
Yeah, he had a similar goofiness or a similar ridiculousness than Adam Case. So Nathan has a question for you. He's saying, is wide receiver a possible target for the Chiefs in round 1, or you think they're thinking edge?
My bad. Sorry, you guys. I think way it's looking at right now, the Chiefs do need a receiver. Well, you have Kadarius Toney, but we don't know. The Chiefs are really high on Kadarius Toney, and the flashes that he showed. Have a good day, Harlan. The flashes that he showed with the Chiefs last season, they were flashes. I mean, he looked pretty good. The Chiefs were using him, and I'm very excited to see what Kadarius Toney has second year with the Chiefs. You have Sky Moore, who's probably going to replace that Juju type role, that possession type of guy. Well, I think what's going to happen is I think the Chiefs are trying to get either OBJ or Hopkins if the price is right for both of them. And what's interesting is the Chiefs have never given a extension or haven't they've traded only they traded for one person, that was Melvin Ingram, over the age of 28. That's the Chiefs just don't go after guys that are over 28, or don't trade or give up multiple picks or give up extensions to guys that are over 28. Chris Jones is probably going to be he's going to get an extension, and he obviously he's 28, so that's probably the only guy that they're going to give an extension to over 28. But we'll have to see there. So I do think receiver could be a target, but I think edge and tackle are still targets for the Chiefs. Jawan Taylor, who we signed, a lot of a lot of people, a lot of reports saying that Jawan Taylor is going to be our left tackle. I could see a situation where the Chiefs get their left tackle of the future in the draft, and they move Jawan Taylor back to right tackle. I do think the Chiefs still need a number one edge, but I think edge and receivers are edge and receiver are still the Chiefs' biggest needs as it stands right now.
Who's what's your running back situation right now? I mean, Clyde doesn't seem to. Is Clyde basically being considered a disappointment at this particular stage in the game?
Clyde, the Chiefs quit using Clyde. I mean, they quit
It
using
feels
Clyde.
that way. Yeah.
Yeah, they pretty much just quit using Clyde. I remember looking back at the stat back in week 10 when we played the Titans. Back when we played the Titans, week 10, because I think it was after our bye week. It was like week 10. He saw like 8% of the snaps or something like that, and then against the Jaguars, kind of the same thing. And the Chiefs just stopped using Clyde. Now I think Clyde has a specific skill set that the Chiefs they weren't using his skill set necessarily right, in my opinion. Clyde is a guy that he's an inside zone runner. He's a good receiver, but the Chiefs weren't really using him in the passing game. They were using all these outside zone runs with Clyde, and I think the injuries definitely did not help Clyde at all. But again, I like Clyde, but we'll have to see what's going on there. Pacheco's the Chiefs' number one running back. He proved that. I like Pacheco a lot, man. Getting him in the 7th round, what a draft pick.
Man alive, yeah. I mean, put it this way, obviously as Jets fans, we're thrilled with Breece Hall, but I couldn't fathom the idea of trading up for a running back, because I was like, well, you could get all these other guys like Dameon Pierce. I mean, I can't say Pacheco was quite on my radar as strongly as some of these other guys were, but it looks like, hey, maybe the Jets and Chiefs, and I would throw the Texans as well with Pierce, hit about as well with running back as they may have the 3 best running backs in the draft. I mean, it feels like the AFC is just so far ahead of the NFC. I think that's fair to say.
Well, yeah. I mean, especially quarterback wise. I don't.
Oh my God! Well, that's one reason.
Yeah, another thing about the running back situation. What's crazy? Tyler Algier, who running back for the Falcons, he had 1,000 yards and he started like 7 or 8 games.
Right.
He was tied with Derrick Henry for seeing the most players in the box, and he still had 1,000 yards. That's incredible, and he was a 4th round pick too. So, I'll throw in Algier in there because. I mean, the 2022 draft class was filled with a lot of good running backs: Breece Hall, Isaiah Pacheco, Tyler Algier, etc. So you have a lot of guys there. But yeah, man. I mean, I like Breece Hall. I think he's going to be a really, really special player for you guys.
I believe so as well. It's just a matter of how soon will he get back to being a special way. I mean, you could see all the photos. I mean, J.K. Dobbins, he was coming back from a torn ACL, and he was adamant that he was going to be playing week 1, that he'd be ready to go for the season. He was never really quite right until towards the end of the season.
Yeah.
So I mean,
they weren't really. Yeah. I remember he was he? I think he went on Twitter or something like that. He was talking about where he wanted to get more carries, and the Ravens weren't really giving him opportunities. But
he was.
Man. Yeah. But yeah. So again, it's just so both. I mean, the way I look at it is both of our teams drafted really well, and it's gonna help our teams for the future. I mean, the Jets. Look at the Jets draft. You got Sauce Gardner, who's a top 5 corner, arguably. You have Garrett Wilson coming off a really good rookie year, won offensive rookie of the year, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, okay, yeah, I think he won, right? He won offensive rookie of the year.
Yeah, Wilson won. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, and then you have Breece Hall. You have some other guys, and then we got Max Mitchell, who he looked good at right tackle before he got injured. But yeah, man. So you guys drafted really well. But one player that I'm really interested to see play more is Michael Clemens. I mean he I remember watching his press conference. Oh, sorry, Jeremy. But I remember watching his press conference, and man, looking at his film, he looks pretty good, man.
Yeah, one thing about Michael Clemens you have to understand that's interesting is he actually took more snaps last year than JJ.
That's
Jermaine
right.
Johnson, who was the 26th pick.
Really?
Yeah, he actually took more snaps than he did. Now, JJ played fine. It wasn't that JJ didn't play well. It just speaks volumes about, where this kid came from. Like, he came in, he's a little bit older. So, because he was a JUCO kid. So he's a lot older, stronger, more, he was more NFL ready to do that. And he played really well and had an impact. And so did JJ. They both did.
Yeah.
But the fact that he was a 4th round pick and played more snaps than JJ is pretty incredible.
And one advantage of Clemens, though, is he played special teams as well as he did. He was a real disruptor. Now JJ was hurt for a little bit, like he missed a game or two, but Clemens just became like a cult hero. All it took was his first press conference, and the guy was immediately a cult hero. He became our Chuck Norris. It was pretty remarkable. In the back of my mind, it's like, oh my gosh, please let his play just be close to this hype. We gotta keep this train going. But if you hear his voice, it's like if James Earl Jones became a football player. That's pretty much who he is. The voice would just scare you to death.
Guys, I have to wrap it up. Chiefs Live, it was great to have you on again. And
thank you for having me on. I really do appreciate it.
It's been a long time. We'll have you back for sure. Especially if there's a pregame, when the Jets are going to play the Chiefs, we'll have you on that week 100%. And
do we play this year?
Oh yeah.
MetLife.
We sure do.
That's right.
So we'll talk
Aaron
the
Rodgers,
week of the.
There's Mahomes, man. I can't wait for that. That's going to be.
You think that game will be on Sunday night?
So we'll talk the week of that game, and we'll talk post game as well, if it makes sense. And
100%. Just let me know.
But all right, so let's wrap it up. I want to thank everybody in the chat. Those of you who came over from Green Bean's show, and some of you stayed, which I really appreciate.
Awesome.
A lot of new subscribers. Please, I hope you stay subscribed. If you like the content, stay subscribed so you can get notifications and see some more of our content. And Watsuke, what do you want to say?
Oh man, well, we're cranking out the content in 2 quick videos. Hey, when you're working, you're very overworked. Sometimes all you can put out are the 1-minute short videos. So we did that. Been putting out some content lately on the Knicks. I did a tribute video for Willis Reed, the Knicks legend who just passed away. So that's something to check out. He included some quotes from Marv Albert's old book from back in 1970 about Willis. And that was a pretty sad moment. But there'll be some more baseball content coming out over the next week or two as the season is starting very soon. So I think this weekend we're gonna up some baseball content. And hey, want to thank everybody who's been coming along for the ride at NY Sports Wicker Media. Really appreciate you. Jeremy, you're muted.
I want to thank John Nolte for the super chat. Go to Chiefs Live, by the way. Subscribe to his channel. He puts out great videos and content.
Thank you.
Fun stuff to watch. Yeah, no, absolutely, man. Guys, really, go to Chiefs Live and subscribe to his stuff. We'll have him back. We are playing this year. It'll be fun to have a Chiefs expert on the
like
show.
This, right?
Yeah. Yeah, you're doing it right. Yeah.
So take care, everyone. I want to thank everybody again. Appreciate you all so much, everybody. I will see you maybe on Friday, but we'll definitely see you tomorrow night for the Thursday night thick of it. Don't miss that. It's going to be a blast. Good night, everyone.
Good. All right. Thank y'all.
We are live. We got Harry W. We got Richie from Jets Media, Matt O'Leary, Iowa Jets fan, who in the house. We got Dom C in the house. We got Steve, live CEO of the Jet Lounge. So I knew I'd get rich on my channel. See what's going on. Yeah, there we go. Woo.
Jets by 1 million today.
Yeah.